Hi everyone, welcome to CEU Executive MBA London, Lisbon, Bruxelles Open Day. I'm Thomas Lamel, I'm the Senior Program Manager and I will guide you through this evening. So what to expect tonight? We'll start with a program presentation about the CEU Executive MBA, followed by a meet and greet with a current participant. Today you'll have the chance to get to know Olivier Boruchovic live from Brussels. After the meet and greet with the current participant, you'll have the opportunity to enjoy a keynote presentation by our faculty member, Joy Chan, Professor Joy Chan. And afterwards, we will have a Q&A session to conclude this evening. If you have any questions regarding the keynote presentation itself or the program, feel free to use direct messaging or the chat box, shoot in your questions, and I will collect them for the Q&A session in the end. So let's get started without further ado. So the problem you're facing right now, most probably in these turbulent times, is the question, is an MBA still worth it? Because you don't have to go very far these days to encounter that we're witnessing fundamental transformations in the world in a century. In 2008, not even 15 years ago, we had a big financial crisis. In 2015, we have seen a huge refugee crisis. And right now, we're in the biggest pandemic in a century. And these changes are part of a much broader set of transformation that is going on. And some of them are positive, but some of them are pretty dangerous, to be honest. And the key question is, how do we as business professionals, how do you as business professionals prepare for this challenging and unpredictable environment? So the obvious question is an MBA the way to do it? We have seen an explosion of online education over the last 2 years, and I will show you why we believe our MBA is still worth it. So if you're looking for an MBA or an executive MBA, you usually start reaching for the stars because you deserve the best education. And of course, you're looking for the best education out there. And what you tend to find at the leading business schools in the world is that they offer a very differentiated and mission-driven MBA curriculum, which means they offer a certain perspective, they offer a certain expertise, or a certain mission with regard to ideational values. Of course, I don't need to tell you that those leading business schools are mostly in the United Kingdom itself or mostly in the United States. So what else? What you would find else at these business schools is that their faculty is coming from around the world. It's a very global faculty with, of course, top credentials. I mean, just look at the leading business schools in the world. All the faculty is coming from Ivy League universities or British universities, offering you the best learning experience out there. The same applies to the student body. The student body at these leading business schools is very much international because of their reputation on the one side, and on the other side, it's because of their full-time format. So people move to the new location and spend some time in the US in order to pursue higher education. These American universities offer a very strong campus experience. And by campus experience, we don't only talk about, the building itself, the university as an institution. We talk about the campus and its infrastructure. We talk about its services and the infrastructure. And this is only offered at American business schools, like this campus experience that we all know from, American movies that take place on university campuses. But on the downside, if you go on with your research, you will find out that these programs are pretty much expensive, starting at 120,000 euro or a little bit less in British pound for tuition and other expenses. And these programs, because of their full-time format, require you to be out of your job, away from your job for at least a year. Some of these programs even force you to stay away from your job for more than a year, for 2 years, for example, which means in order to pursue higher education at these locations, you might need to relocate your family as well. So if this frightens you off, you usually start looking for an MBA in the city you live in or the country you live in. What you would find with these local programs is mostly a plain vanilla MBA curriculum, which doesn't mean that it's a bad curriculum, but it means there is no certain perspective, there is no certain expertise, and they're not even mission driven. Speaking of the faculty, it's no surprise that most of the faculty or all of the faculty are pretty much local faculty in those programs. In the best case, they're regional or transnational, but they do not offer international faculty in those MBA programs that are based on a local level. And the same applies to the student body. The students in these regional city MBAs are pretty much local. The diversity is not really big. So there's the international student body is just national or regional at the best. But of course, these local programs offer advantages that might attract you. For example, they are cheaper than leading business schools in the world. They offer, for example, in Lisbon or in Brussels, MBA programs are as expensive as 80,000 euro, a little bit less in British pound for tuition, and in addition to other expenses. And another advantage is that these local programs allow you to keep your job, to stay on your job, because you are attending an MBA program in the city you live in, so it's easier for you to commute and to attend these programs. So what we do at CEU is to offer the best of these two worlds. There is no work interruption thanks to the practical and modular format. I will talk about the format later. The executive MBA, our executive MBA, is very much mission driven. We call it the executive MBA for the open world. I will talk about this philosophy later in this presentation. We do have an international student body because of the modularity of the program. Participants can fly in, can fly out to the modules, which is a major advantage of the program. By the way, CEU is the second most international university in the world. So diversity is pretty much reflected in the international student body. And speaking of international, so is our faculty. We offer global faculty with the top credentials that you would expect at leading business schools. So we offer the best of two worlds. And last but not least, let's talk about most probably the most important attribute for some of us is tuition. The CEU Executive MBA is only 29,000 euro, which means you will get the best academic excellence at eye level with the best leading business schools in the world at a local price. I will talk about this financial advantage later in this presentation. And of course, we offer a multi-campus experience because we're an international university accredited in the US and the EU, so you will receive a double degree. And we offer modules in Vienna and Budapest, which offer you a multi-campus experience and a sense of belonging. It's more than just going into a building in order to attend a lecture. It's about a sense of belonging. So when we say world-class faculty, we really mean it. I would like to introduce you to some of our faculty members. The purpose is just to give you an impression of our faculty members. We do not have the time to show all of our faculty members, but of course, this is just an overview of our faculty members, of some of our faculty members. For example, Professor Aisu Senius, with a PhD from the US, from Central Florida. She's an expert on marketing and in particular on emotional marketing. If you're experienced in finance, you'll be placed in the advanced track course with Professor Adam Zawodowski, who's a leading expert on complex investments with a PhD from Princeton. If you're new to finance, you will have the opportunity to get to know Joy Chan, our a guest speaker tonight, who is just a gifted educator and unique in explaining complex financial concepts. You will learn from her later during this event. For the course on big data and artificial intelligence will be taught by Miklos Koran, one of the leading scholars in his field with a Harvard PhD. Or Luca, a practitioner coming from McKinsey. She's an expert on data and in digitalization. She will also teach your modules on data. For innovation, you'll have Mike Labelle, who holds the prestigious EU's Jean Monnet Chair. For economics, Mark Kaufmann, an expert in applied theory with executive education experience and with a PhD from Harvard. Or Sophia Barani with a PhD from London School of Economics. She's an expert on the future of work, so she has very deep insight on the automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics. For strategy, you'll have Yusuf Akbar, who has taught in more than 40 countries and advises leading Fortune 500 companies. So we also invite visiting faculty to teach your classes. Again, we invite only the best and the creme de la creme for the modules and electives to teach you. Just to give you an impression of who we are inviting to teach your electives and modules, we invite Professor Christian Selos, an expert on innovation from Stanford University, or an expert on digital marketing, Miklos Savary from Columbia University. Professor Omar Hernandez is an expert on operations management from Berkeley Haas Business School in the US. We also invite Professor Hui Chen from the University of Zurich to teach your classes. And just to give you another example, Professor Paula Caproni from the University of Michigan. So here's what the program looks like. As you can see, it's a 10-module program. The dates you can see right now on the screen are not going to change. So you can basically plan your studying around professional and family activities based on these dates. As you can see in the top row, we have 3 modules in the first year, 4 modules in the second year, which is the center row, and 3 modules in the third year, which is the bottom row, which gives you full flexibility and a balance in your life. You might have noticed that we are piggybacking around popular European holidays like November 1st, May 1st, or August 15th, when it's usually easier for you to take time off and attend our modules over long weekends. In the summers, which is the center column, our bespoke and cutting-edge leadership program takes place in Budapest, and you'll have the opportunity to benefit from those electives from the faculty in the world we invite to teach your classes. So one day, there will come the day when you finish with us and you will join CEU alumni from around the world. As I already said, CEU is the second most international university, and you can rely on an active elite network of more than 18,000 professionals all around the world on every continent. We have city-level chapters, we have country-level chapters. Basically, wherever you are in the world or wherever you might go in the world in the future, you will find CEU alumni to interact with, to mingle with, and to make new friends with. And the network is a network that you can count on, and one of the key assets that we have. Our approach to alumni relations is a very American-driven approach. So our alumni are easy to reach, easy to approach. They are in both ways, in a structured way through our alumni relations department. If you're looking, for example, for a specific person in a specific city, or a person in a specific company, organization, or region, they would be happy to establish contact. Or, of course, in an informal way through our social media groups on LinkedIn and Facebook. You can just reach out through social media groups and just place an inquiry there. If you're looking for a specific person, if you want to mingle in a city, if you want to make new friends, it's easy as that. So I already mentioned that we are offering tuition, the whole program at a tuition of only 29,000 euro. So the obvious question is, how are we even able to offer such a high quality program at eye level with the best business schools in the world at only 29,000 euros? And the answer is pretty simple and lies in our founder and benefactor, George Soros, who created CEU with the mission to promote open society. Just recently, George Soros made a further contribution to CEU's mission by offering another $1 billion, billion with a B, an endowment to create the Open Society University Network, which means we are the best endowed university in Europe. But we're taking use of that financial endowment. We're passing on this financial endowment to our participants and students through lower tuition and scholarships and fellowships. So speaking of the Executive MBA for the Open World, what does the Executive MBA for the Open World mean? What makes CEU so unique compared to other programs? First of all, when we talk about the open world, we mean skepticism towards dogmas, towards hierarchies and privileges, both in context of how we teach, but also in composition of the cohort. Diversity is key to creating a successful program. And for us, diversity is not just an empty marketing catchphrase in order to create a colorful marketing brochure. It's part of our DNA. Secondly, we believe in debate and radical rational thinking. Every idea can be challenged because we believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives and fake news, because it's narratives and fake news that create the polarization in our societies these days. And we believe the best way in order to challenge this narrative-based discourse is to make arguments based on facts and realities, which is the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of open societies. We are fundamentally opposed to all kinds of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. The way we finance our scholarship, the scholarship means we create opportunities for people who traditionally have not been able to actually join programs like this. And we see managers not just as people who deal with businesses and resources, but we also believe that managers go beyond that. Whatever the professional background is, if you're coming from the corporate world, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're coming from the public sector, NGO, or human rights activism or culture, you are a positive change agent and you can make a bit in this world. So what does the CEU classroom look like? Currently, we have 65 managers with an average of 14 years of work experience, including 3 years of leadership/managerial experience. As you can see from the background image, we use state-of-the-art classroom technology and setups in order to facilitate lively discussion and interaction in class. We make use of case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you would find in local MBA programs. Because we want to take you, experts in your specific field, from the level of functional expertise to the strategic level. We offer a hybrid format, so every participant can choose to join online or attend on-site. We encourage everybody to join on-site because it's just a better learning experience. Nothing compares to on-site education, because education and the knowledge of transfer isn't just about learning some content. It's also about interaction in class. It's about socializing with your fellows. It's about lunch breaks spending together, coffee breaks spending together, and social activities after your class, which create a bond and a network that you can count on. But of course, if traveling is inconvenient or if you have underlying health conditions, you can opt into for online education. In order to facilitate the best learning experience, the best online learning experience, we have invested heavily in studio-grade microphones, capturing, of course, the lecturers, but also the participants. Because for us, education is not just a one-way street from the lecturer to the student, to the participant. It also happens vice versa, from the participant to the lecturer, and it happens among fellows. We also invested in large screens and high quality cameras, so it's easier for you to capture who said what in class and allocate debate entries. We have created physical virtual breakout rooms for support teams. You can see the support teams here on the slide on the left. The color code identifies which support teams those people belong to. And the name, it makes it easier for you to allocate debate entries. So you know, for example, oh, this debate entry, the thing that has just been said came from Andrew, for example. Something very specific about the support teams. Of course, the support teams are your groups where you are required to do group presentations and group papers, but there's more to it. The support teams are handpicked, which means you will be in a support team exposed to as much diversity as possible. So you won't be in a support team with people coming from the same industry, the same company, the same linguistic background, or the same profession, or the same country. You will be placed in a very diverse group with people coming from diverse backgrounds, because this is where diversity really kicks in. When you're exposed to different learning and debate techniques, to different solution-making and decision-making processes, this is where you learn and gain insight from other industries and other cultures. Of course, needless to say, we offer high quality individual support on every level that you're with us, from the level of inquiring about the program to actually applying for the program, to being in the program, to becoming an alumni or being an alumni. We are always here for you and happy to help you and to engage with you. Tuition is only 29,000 euro, which is very competitive on the American market, on the European market, thanks to our financial endowment. And 29,000 euro is for the whole program and includes all the credits. As I said, there is an online option. If you prefer to join single modules or the whole program online, you're free to do that. If traveling is inconvenient or if you have any other reasons, so you have full flexibility over the attendance. We have, in order to defray your other costs, we have negotiated special rates with partner hotels in Vienna and Budapest, ranging from the budget level to the luxury level. And we have negotiated discount rates with partner airlines like Lufthansa Group and Austrian Airlines, which will bring you to Vienna or Budapest at lower cost. So we invite you to join the open world by March 27th, which is the application deadline. And the application starts online on our website. I strongly encourage everybody to apply as soon as possible because we have a first come, first served policy. So the sooner you apply, the sooner you can reserve your study seat. And you're invited to book a one-on-one consultation with me via our website or via the link that is being provided in the chat right now to discuss your questions and optimize your applications. I'd be happy to discuss and optimize your application or discuss your scholarship options in a one-on-one consultation. So feel free to book a one-on-one consultation with me. So that's about it from us, from the program office. I mean, you have realized that we are very much committed and passionate about the program itself. But I think it's another thing to hear about the program from people who are actually in the program right now, because it's just the more authentic, more honest feedback. And I'm very happy that one of our current participants joined us tonight, even though he's very busy. I know that. I really appreciate, Olivier, that you joined us tonight live from Brussels. Olivier, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you could, at the beginning, just briefly introduce yourself, like where are you coming from? What is your professional background?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you right now. I am working in the cultural industry in one of the major European cultural institutions called Beaux-Arts in Brussels in the marketing department. And so I'm working in the industry of culture, basically.
Okay, you are, I mean, how to put it? You're coming from an industry that is usually traditionally not really close to, you know, doing or considering MBA programs like arts, NGOs, culture, public sector. They usually are not, you know, the standard crowd that you would find in MBA or executive MBA programs. So can you tell us something? Can you tell me something about your personal motivation, why you think that our executive MBA is a fit to people who are not coming from the traditional corporate world?
Yes, absolutely. Well, there were different reasons. First of all, the market of culture is changing very much. And so it's very important for cultural institutions to understand how the market works and to get used to the best practices in business. So I was looking for something that was not very easy to find, because first of all, I needed a modular program because I wanted to continue to work in Brussels, and it was important for me to stay with my family too. So it was important for me to find a modular program, which is the case for the CEU. Second, it was also important for me to find a program that not only proposes managerial tools, but also proposes a political perspective on the world, a vision on the world, because it's not sufficient to have the managerial tools. It's also important to understand what's the sense, what's the meaning of our actions, and I think that's really what's the specification of this program and of the CEU, because the commitment of the university to the open society is very important, as it is very important for me and for people working in the business of culture, of course.
Thank you very much. Sorry that my camera froze here at Impact Hub London, but I mean it's no shame, because I'm not here it's not about me, it's about you guys. It's about Joy and about you, Olivier. Thank you for giving us insight. I think it's very important to point out that the program is very attractive to people who are coming from the traditional corporate world, of course, but also for people who are coming from the non-traditional world. As I said, you know, NGOs, human rights, international organizations, culture, etc. Olivier, could you tell us about your class or the cohorts that you already met, because you've been in touch with multiple cohorts already. Can you tell us about the diversity?
Yes, of course. I was thinking about that when you were talking about business and people working different kind of industries. It's important to choose a university, I think, as a student, where it's possible to meet people coming from different business. And it's the case of my cohort. I have the chance to meet people coming from all over the world, from India, from Europe, even from Australia, and coming from different kind of industries. So when we are preparing together or team assignments, the exchanges of experiences in our respective businesses are very, very important and very rich to the final delivery that we proposed for our assignments. So I would say that not only from a professional point of view, but also from a personal point of view, I'm very satisfied, and I really encourage people to participate to this program, because this program gives you the chance to meet people that you wouldn't meet in other circumstances. So that's the chance that this program offers to all participants. And what's also important is that the program is also very respectful to the level of each individual. So not only through our personal training, but also through the exchanges that we have inside of our teams, uh, we um, we we are trying to exchange our perspectives and what are our own experiences in our history, in our professional backgrounds, and to contribute to a specific global perspective, offering a diversity of points of views. And that's exactly, I think, the philosophy of this program.
Yeah, just to summarize it, just to put it in numbers, we have people flying into the modules coming in from 5 continents. So it's a really international program. I mean, we're the second most international university. We have people coming from diverse backgrounds. As I said, traditional corporates like Siemens or HSBC or other blue chip companies, but also founders of their own companies. We have medical doctors in the program. We have many people coming from the pharma industry, biotech, but also people coming from NGOs, public sector, and human rights, because we have a strong reputation for being an advocate for human rights, diversity, inclusion, minority rights, etc. So whatever your professional background is, you are welcome, and this is a fit for you, because you might not have a business background. You might be a medical doctor or an engineer, but you are or about to come into a leadership position where you need leadership skills. And this is the executive MBA that helps you acquire those leadership skills, no matter what your professional background is. And you don't have to have any skills in finance or accounting. If you're experienced, you will be placed in the advanced track. If you're a newbie, you will be placed with Joy, who is a uniquely gifted educator. So thank you, Olivier. I would like to move on to the next part, to our keynote presentation with Joy Chan, who is our VIP guest tonight. And she will talk about how is your financial health. Joy is, as I already said, a teacher, lecturer of our core finance courses, and has been with CEU since 2015. Thank you very much, Joy, for joining us from Lisbon.
So thank you very much, Thomas, and welcome all of you to this presentation. Maybe just a little bit about what I do and what I'm going to be delivering today in this presentation. So my focus is on financial health, specifically how it relates to you as an individual. How is your financial health? Because I think health is wealth. So to say, wealth is health. Yeah, it works both ways. And I hope to be able to share with you what I teach not just in CEU, I mean, or at least the way I convey my classes, but also in not just in CEU, but also, I mean, if you're looking at a corporate training event on, wellness, this is what I also will cover. So a little bit about what I do. I am from Singapore originally. That's the picture that you see right up there, the first picture. I've lived in Budapest for almost 20 years, and that's how I was associated with CEU. And right now I'm actually in Portugal, and that's where I'm based for the moment. So I've been teaching for the last 20 over years in finance and different areas of finance. Yeah, so very specifically for the executive MBA programs, as well as the Masters in Finance. In addition to teaching, what I also do on the side is consulting. I do quite a bit on wealth coaching, where I help my clients achieve their financial goals. And what I'm going to do today with you is one of the training sessions that I do, or one of the coaching sessions that I do for my clients. So let me start with looking at your financial health. Yeah, and given that this is the beginning of the year, maybe it's a good time to start with your financial health check. So a financial health check typically requires us to think about financial planning. And financial planning is actually an ongoing process. And if you think about that, it's looking at where you are. So it's evaluating where you are, what you have at the moment. So your current financial health. And then the next thing to ask yourself is not just where you are, but where you want to go. So what are your goals? Yeah. So investing in yourself is probably one of the best financial goals that you can make in your life. And that is, well, doing an MBA, for example. So that's really what kind of goals do you have? So your goals perhaps to retire early. A goal could have been to provide for, to pay for a second home, for example, or to pay for your children's education abroad. So what are your financial goals? And then the next thing to do, of course, is to develop a plan of action. So no use having all these goals when you don't have an action plan in place. So we are always talking about, well, what is your action? Action is one, implementing is the other. Yeah, so implementing is putting your goals, having them, having the ability to achieve those goals that you have planned out. And finally, of course, it requires us to reevaluate and to look at your progress. So maybe 10 years down the road, you look at your goals and you go, oh my God, there is no way I could retire because I've not saved enough. So you have to, well, adjust your goals, think about probably new ways of investing, think about what you should do with your money, whatever it may be. So it's sort of it's a cycle that kind of repeats, and it sort of goes on and on and on. Yeah, and the whole idea behind it is, if your financial life situation changes, then I think you should relook at your financial plans, relook at your goals. So for example, if you get married or you have a kid, then of course your goals will change together with your financial situation and together with your life situation. So financial planning is an ongoing exercise. Yeah, and then, so I'm going to go into a little bit more details, and then hopefully at the end of it, I could address some of the questions that you may have. So in evaluating your financial health, is to take stock of your current situation. So if you think about a company, you've got income and you've got expenses. Yeah, so it's like the revenues that a company has. So you make sales, for example, you've got revenue streams coming from selling different services or products. Likewise for you as an individual, how much money do you make? Yeah, what are your sources of income? So there could be money that you have worked actively for. So in the world of income, we always ask ourselves, what is active and what is passive? I think passive is kind of straightforward. You don't have to work very hard to get that stream of income. Active means you're very much involved in, for every dollar that you earn, you're working for it. So of course, what it also means is as you move towards retirement, then the active becomes more passive. Yeah, so you should be moving towards more passive income. So think about your passive income, and passive income could come from things like rent. So if you've got a property, you rent it out, that's passive because you didn't have to work to get that rental income. It could also be dividends that you get by investing in a stock. So for example, Coca-Cola shares that you buy, you collect dividends, that's passive. It could be interest income. Of course, today we're looking at very low interest rates, but over time, when interest rates rise, then interest income is a steady source of income that you possibly can get. So what are the sources that you have and how much do you have? Yep. And the next one is expenses. I think most of us have got a lot more expenses than we do have income streams. So the question, of course, is how much are you spending? What are you spending on? Are you wasting your money on unnecessary expenditure? So are there things that you spend that are not really required? Yeah. So you're just spending because it's there. Online shopping is readily available. And worse still, if you're spending more than you earn. So take a look at that. Sometimes it requires you to put together a budget. Budgeting, I think it's critical because if you don't track your expenses, then I think it's very hard for you to evaluate your financial health. And the next thing, of course, is your assets. Yeah. So what are your asset streams? What is the debt that you have? So if you look at a company, it's really a balance sheet. So your companies have got all your assets. Likewise for you, if I ask you what your asset is, you tell me, okay, Joy, I've got cash, I've got some investments, I've got some real estate. So those are assets that you have. And the next question, of course, is what are your debts? Yeah. So for your property that you have, do you have a loan that's taken on that? If that's the case, then you've got debt on that property and you have to put that into your balance sheet or into what we call a net worth statement. So look at yourself, and all of us would have our own individual net worth statement, our own individual income statement. If you're a family, if you're yeah, in a family, then you should be looking at it as a family unit. Yeah, so the husband and the wife, for example, with the kids. So next thing, of course, is to look at the financial goals. That's what I mentioned. So having, knowing where you are and where you're going to. So you need to have some goals in place. And these goals ideally should be explicit. What do we mean by explicit? Converted into numbers. Yeah. So you should be quantifying these goals that you have. So it's no use saying, I want to retire. Then of course the question is when, where, how much? Yeah. So you have to quantify that. So your goal could be, okay, I want to retire in 20 years with, 1 million euros in my retirement nest. That's a goal. That's something that is, whether it's achievable or not, it's a different thing. But at least you're working towards something, and you've got a time frame, you've got an amount as your end goal. Yeah, and of course, goals do change. It's important to update your goals and be realistic about it. So in the world of goals, typically we try to spread it according to time horizons. So short term, within a year. So these are goals that you want to achieve immediately. So for example, pay down my credit card bill, for example. Yeah. Intermediate could be, well, pay down my housing loan and start investing. And long term could be, well, I want to pay for my child's, university education abroad. So that's something that is 10 years down the road. So put a time frame to your goals, because depending on when it is, then of course your investment portfolio has to change. Because if it's if it's a goal that is very close to right now, like for example 3 years down the road versus 30 years down the road, then you're not going to be taking too much risk with the money that you need in 3 years versus the money that you need in 30 years. Yeah, so your risk adjusts depending on the time horizon that you have. So that's step number 2. And I always say nothing happens without a plan. I think it's good to sit down, jot down your plans. It's like a company. When you run a company, you think about a business plan, you put together a business plan, you put together your forecasts, financials. Likewise for yourself, I think it's good to write down what your goals are, where you are coming from, and then of course, how do we achieve them? Yeah, and the reason why we also have a plan is it's psychological, because when things are bad, times are bad, like you lose a job, when the market's crashing and your investment portfolio is shrinking, you can go back to your goals, go back to your plan, and remind yourself okay, these are the goals that I have. I can wait on certain things. Even if the market crashes, I'm not going to freak out because I'm looking at it on a long-term basis. Yeah, so it sort of helps you stay on track if you have something that's written versus having these ideas but not actually writing them down and looking at them, whether it's on a laptop or on paper. And the third thing that I always recommend most of us do in the world of wealth management is really to think of yourself as a company. Yeah, if you're a company, you will have a budget, so keep to your budget, know what you've been spending your money on, keep track of it. You will have your net worth established, which is how much assets you have. Yeah, to be more precise, I think the easiest way to think about this is take all your assets minus all your liabilities or your debt. Yeah, and that will give you your net worth. Yeah, and that's really the equity in a business or your net worth. Yeah, and the last thing we'll do is look at yourself as a company. Because, if you look at yourself as a company, you've got to think about financial ratios as well. Yeah, so we'll calculate some ratios and to figure out where you are and how you are relative to certain benchmarks and certain recommendations. All right, so I'm going to focus on these concepts and I'll move on. The budget that you have. So research, this is American data, and it says here that about 90% of people do not keep track of their expenses. This is in the US. It's probably very similar in Europe, maybe not 90%, but majority of people don't keep track. When's the last time you keep track or you tracked your expenses? I think it's good to do that. Maybe not going forward like every day, but do it for a period of time just to know where your money is going to. I think that's kind of important. And hopefully you're generating some profits. Yeah. So the revenues that you have for a company, it's equivalent to your income stream. So you've got salaries, dividends, bonuses, whatever. You've got a whole pile of expenses. And hopefully the difference between the two, there's a lot more salary and dividends that you have, which then translates into savings, which is equivalent to the profit that a company makes. The second thing is your net worth. Yeah, so going back to the net worth, it's a balance sheet of your financial situation. It lists out all the assets that you own, all the liabilities or the debt that you have, and the difference between the two is your net worth. Yeah, so that's the equity in a company, or for you, it's a net worth. And the only difference between a personal, net worth statement and a balance sheet is that in a personal statement, what we try to do is we mark our assets to market values. Yeah. So we figure out what are the market values of these assets. I'll give you an example. Imagine if you bought a property. So you've got an apartment, yeah, and you bought this apartment, 10 years ago. What you should do on your balance sheet or your net worth statement is to reflect the value of this property today. Yeah, so if I had to sell this property in the market today, how much would it be? It's not the price that you paid 4 or 5 years ago. Hopefully it's appreciated and you'll be looking at today's price. Yeah, so your net worth is actually adjusted to reflect market values. The other thing that's important are your liabilities. What you should do, all the debt that you have, you should be listing what you have to pay if you terminate it today. So as an example, again, with a property, you've taken a loan to buy it 5 years ago. You've paid the loan down every year for the last 5 years. And if you were to terminate the loan today, how much would you have to pay back the bank? That's what really matters. Yeah. So it's what's outstanding that matters, because it's me trying to figure out what the value is or what's my outstanding debt, what the outstanding debt is today. Yeah. So just to recognize that, your net worth statement will then vary and it will change depending on when you're looking at it. So 2 years down the road, you're going to have an updated net worth statement. So what I will do is I'm going to walk through an example with you. I've got Jones, this family. Yeah, and what we're going to do is, illustrate with this family. So John and Eva are both in their 40s. They've got 2 kids. And the 2 kids are fairly young, so 10 and 8. They've got a dog. John works in tech. Eva's a nurse. They've got an apartment that they bought. They took a 15-year mortgage. So most people who buy apartments would actually, or buy a property, will probably take a loan. So they've got a loan of about, they've got a 15-year loan paying off $2,600 every month. They've got 2 cars, 1 car that's fully paid. So they're paying off the second car. So that's something to bear in mind, because later on, we're going to look at how much debt they have. I'm sorry, I don't know why this is flipping all the time. Both children attend a state school, so we don't have to worry about private education. They contribute to a private pension fund. They've got also a university fund that they contribute to. They rely on state health care, which is a mandatory contribution. They don't have to worry about that because it's against their salary, it's deducted against their salary. And everything that I have is presented to you in euros. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, here it is. I'm going to put together, show you the income statement, and I will also show you the balance sheet, which is the net worth statement. So you should be able to do that for yourself, but I'm going to use this, family as an illustration. So if you take a minute to look at this, they've got salaries, so regular salaries. So this is after tax, so net of all the deductions they have to make. They've got some other sources of income because of, the side income that they earn and some dividends. So a total of 9,100. And then they have a whole bunch of expenses, which is typically what you and I would have. But the only thing that I've done it differently is I've actually converted from pure expenses into what it really needs. So you need that to survive, and what is wants. Yeah, wants is desirable. So the non-necessities. I think it's good to actually separate that, because then you realize if you're going to try to save a bit more in order to invest, the first thing you do is attack the wants, because that's easier to remove, because you might not need these things compared to the needs. So the needs that they have is about 6,190, which also includes things like the mortgage that they have to pay, the car loan that they have to pay, car expenses, their fund, the university fund contributions, etc., etc. Yeah, and the ones I think you can see right there, it's dining out. Well, it was December, so they got gifts to buy. The total ones is about 1,600, which leaves them with the difference between the two. Between the income and the expenses classed as needs and wants, and that's 1,310. All right, so that brings us to the balance sheet. So what we have here is the balance sheet. Like with a company, you've got assets, you've got liabilities, and you've got the equity, which is the net worth. Yeah. So I have the assets. I mean, I can just quickly go through it with you because I know we're probably tight on time. They've got assets that are current, so cash, savings, bonds, so things that are very, very safe. So putting your money in a bank, fixed deposits, these are considered as very safe investments. Stock, by the way, it's not considered a safe, a stock market or the funds that you have, it's not considered a safe investment because of the volatility. Yeah. So when we look at what is deemed to be cash and cash equivalents, it's always something that's very low risk. They've got investments, they've got some retirement plans, they've got the house they own, which is the biggest asset that they own. At 460,000. They've got the cars, that's the market value of the cars, market value of the loans, and they've got some other miscellaneous assets, which gives them total assets of slightly more than 500,000. So 554,300. Let's move on to the liabilities. So liabilities are all the debt obligations that you have. The first thing is credit card, utilities, so bills they haven't paid. Yeah, then they have the long-term liabilities, which most of us would have, a mortgage on the house, auto loan that's outstanding on the car that they own. The total liabilities is given to you right here. So only what is the balance on the debt that they have at about 264,510. The difference between the assets and the liabilities will give you the net worth. Yeah, so this is the net worth of the couple at the family, which is about 290,000 euros. All right, so with all this, which is what you probably have, we can then look at how they're performing. Yeah, so we look at a financial health check right about now. So we're going to do the financial ratios. There are only 3 ratios I'll cover. So in the world of ratios, when it comes to personal finance, it's not so many. So there are only 3 critical ratios, which you probably should do it for yourself. So the first is the liquidity ratio. So that's number 1. Yeah, liquidity ratio is simple. It's like, do you have enough money to meet your living expenses? So do you have enough cash, so cash assets to meet your living expenses? So it's got to be monetary assets, yeah, which means it's cash, it's time deposits in the bank, it's savings deposits. We might stretch it to look at government bonds, but investment grade, because not all governments are created equal. So very, very safe government bonds, but very, very short term. So it's almost guaranteed that you can sell it at the price that you see it, yeah, without too much fluctuations. Other things that you have in investments, which some of you might have, like stocks, like funds, like corporate bonds, for example, they are not considered monetary assets. Yeah, so these are always excluded. Okay, I'm going to do the calculations for the family, but before that, let me just introduce all the ratios here. So the liquidity ratio is always measured in months. Yeah, so we ask ourselves, well, how many months do you have in living expenses that can be covered by your current cash balances or monetary assets? The second is what banks like to look at, which is what credit analysis is in a bank. Yeah, when you go to a bank, the reason why you're borrowing at a certain interest rate is because they look at the risk that you have. And one of the risk factors is to look at how much of your income goes into servicing loans. Yeah, so if you take home, 1,000 euros, how much of it is actually in loans that you have to pay? Yeah, and families should devote to, well, ideally, it should be 20% or less. So if you have got 1,000 euros in your income, then conservatively, you're looking at about 200 euros every month into your debt payments. But what I noticed over the years of doing wealth coaching is that people have much higher ratios. So typically we're looking at about a third. So the limit is about a third, yeah. So 1/3 of your income, so no more than about 35%, should be devoted to these debt obligations or these loans that you're paying. It's all the loans, not just the housing loan. Yeah. So you've got a car loan, you've got a student loan, you've got a credit card loan, I don't know, a whole host of loans. It's the aggregate of all the loans, and it should not be more than a third of your income. And if it exceeds that, typically you're gonna suffer from what we call financial distress or distress situations, because right now interest rates are very low. In the event that interest rates do rise, and they will rise, your ability to make these payments, you've got to pay more and more because interest rates are rising. And then, of course, it just means that your ability to live off what's left is going to be a lot less, and you might suffer from that. Yeah. So to be conservative, typically not more than a third of your income should go into debt payments. And the third is your savings ratio. So savings is what a financial advisor would like to look at. Savings is essentially how much of your income do you have that goes into savings? Yeah, so it's like your profit margin. So if you actually work very hard throughout the year, you spend just as hard, and then suddenly you realize, oh my God, you're only saving like 2% of your income. Would you be happy with it? Or if you run a business to get a 2% profit, would you be happy with it? Probably not. Yeah. So typically we're looking at least 10% of your income that goes into savings of your take-home income. So let's take a look at the couple and see where they are. So what I've done is I've actually juxtapose the income statement together with the net worth statement so that we can run the calculations a lot quicker. All right, so I'm going to start with the first. Let's do the monetary assets, yeah, the liquidity ratio. So let's take a look at the monetary assets. So if you look at this, the monetary assets is really your cash, right? Cash, savings, bonds, fixed deposits. So right here. Yeah, so this is my monetary asset, and I only have about, well, the couple has 15,000. So I'm going to write this down. So it's 15,000. Yep, divided by the living expenses. So if you look at all the living expenses, typically we only look at the needs, yeah, because if you're out of a job, well, you got to sacrifice all your wants, right? So cut the eating out, cut the holidays, because you don't have a job. So we want to at least cover your living expenses to make sure that you're not out there in the cold, homeless. So it's 6190, yeah. So it's 6190. I have the answers. It's about slightly more than 2 months, yeah. So approximately about 2.4 months. I know this because it's in my next slide, but it's about there. The next ratio, so the second ratio that we look at is the debt repayment. So how much of your income goes to servicing your debt? And what they have here is the debt that they have to pay. The mortgage is a very big debt component. Maybe I'll pick a different color so that you can track it later on. So this is 2,600. Yep. And on top of it, if you recall, they took on sorry, I just want to show you. They actually have a loan on the car, and they are servicing this loan, yeah. And it's $400 or 400 euros a month. So on the second car. So we're going to take that into account. So it's 2,600 plus 400, and that will give us very nicely the numbers, yeah, that we are interested in. Yeah, and the take-home income that they have, if you take a minute to look at this slide, it is right there at 9,100. Okay, so here we are. Let me just move on. 9,100, yeah. This is probably slightly, it's about a third, yeah. So probably approximately about a third of the income. I think it's about 32%. And the third ratio that we're going to be looking at is the savings ratio. So let's take a look at them. I'm just going to do it quickly. The income itself is 9,100. That doesn't change. Yeah. And let's look at the savings that they have. I think you can tell me straight away, hey, Joy, the savings is 1,310. Yeah. That's the difference between the salary and all the expenses. All right, so 1,310 is our answer. And let me move you down to 1310. And this probably, it's about 14%. So now that we've done the ratios, the question, of course, is to look at them and ask yourself, like, how are they performing? Because that's how we like to look at yourself as well. So here we are. I have given the recommendations. So for the living expenses, the rule of thumb is to keep between 3 to 6 months of cash as to cover living expenses. Yeah, so to have enough cash to cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses, whether it's 3 or 6, depending on your financial situation. Yeah, so if you are, so if you're the only breadwinner, the sole breadwinner of your family, and you've got kids, then probably you should veer towards 6. But if the couple is working and you've got no kids, then 3 is actually okay. So where you are, sort of, it's that range. The second parameter is your debt repayments ratio. And the idea is keep no more than a third. And they're actually just about there anymore. They will be, it will not be recommended. Yeah. So if they had to buy a second property, for example, the bank is going to definitely charge them a lot more in interest, simply because they can see that a huge amount of it goes into these debt obligations or these loans that they're paying. And the third is the living expenses. So if you take a minute to see this, it's 14%. That's how much they're saving, which is reasonable because it's above the 10% recommendation. Again, it depends on where you are in the life cycle. The earlier you are, the earlier you are in the life cycle, so the younger you are, the probably you don't need to save as much in terms of a percentage because you've got time. But if you only start saving when you're 40 years old and you're hoping to retire at 60, then you've got less and less time. So you need to save a lot more. Yeah, so that's usually the recommendations that I have or that we have as financial advisors. So I think that's essentially it in terms of my slides. Yeah, and I wanted to thank you for your time. This is actually really, really short. I'm trying to compress everything that I, could explain to you as quickly as possible, hoping that I've not lost you in the process.
No, this was amazing, Joy. Thank you so much. And we have some questions from the audience.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Yes, the first question from Hamda comes, how can we learn what investment choices are typical for people in similar situations, especially for someone who has not invested and has fairly good savings? Just not doing anything in particular. So what is typical?
Oh my God. Okay. So let me understand you, Hamda. What you're saying is that you do have savings, but you don't do anything with it. Is that what you're saying? Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So my next question to you is, what do you want to do with the money? What have you been doing with the money? Okay, you've been doing nothing with the money. So what are your goals? I think that's ultimately what matters, right? So if your goal, depending on, I have no idea where you are, like how old you are and what your goals are, but let's just make it easy. If your goal is to plan for your retirement, so let's imagine that you're looking at a 20-year time frame or a 30-year time frame, then I think you should mobilize your savings and generate some returns. Yeah, because that's the passive income that you're working on. Yeah, so invest that money, let it grow for you over time. Because if you don't do that, what will happen is that, if you leave it in the bank, for example, what will happen is that the inflation right now, we're living in times that are very unusual because inflation is fairly high. The inflation will erode your money. Yeah, so over time, you're going to be able to spend less and less because of inflation. You can buy it less and less. So I don't know if that addresses your question.
Hamda, you can now simply unmute if you want to ask more or ask for a follow-up. But I see you. It was exactly what you.
Yeah, hopefully grow. Okay, yeah. If grow is what you're looking for. Sorry, I was just scanning on my other computer.
Yeah.
If grow is what you're looking for, you must take on some investments. You must invest that money. So the question, of course, is in the universe of investments, what would you do? Yeah, so that really depends on your risk tolerance So if you are very risk averse, then maybe the stock market is not for you. Maybe you should just buy some corporate bonds, for example. Yeah, so it really depends on what is your tolerance for risk, and that will then kind of bring you, I mean, or kind of, yeah, put you on a certain path when it comes to investing. The alternative that I would recommend for you is to keep a portfolio. Yeah, because we have no idea, like, should we put all our money into stocks? Probably not, because I don't do that, and I don't encourage anyone else to do it, because there's just way too much volatility. So what you probably should do is have a portfolio, a percentage of it allocated in stocks, a percentage of it in bonds, so that you have, and a percentage of it in real estate, so that you have a diversified portfolio. And even if the markets, yeah, if there is a downturn, for example, not everything is going to crash in your portfolio because you have a diverse asset allocation.
I have another question, Joy. I mean, it's such an, as always, it's such a pleasure to listen. The clarity with which you explain is just always amazing. But I have a kind of course, from my perspective as a scholar, I have a question. What was missing in your presentation is kind of a topic of growing discussion, which is inherited wealth. Yes, and I wonder, because you advise so many people, I'm sure you are encountering, and especially an interesting aspect is, because of life expectancy goes up, you inherit wealth when you are already in retirement or very close to it. Yes, which is, like, I think, slightly new phenomenon. Yes, so it's not like you inherit normally you don't inherit wealth from your parents at 40. You can inherit wealth at 60 or 70, yes? And then the question is whether you see from your practice, from your advisory work, does this phenomenon of more and more importance of inherited wealth, which we see from, aggregate data, does this impact people's investment, savings, and spending patterns, in your view?
Okay. So you're saying that you inherit wealth in your much later in life, yeah? So, and how would that impact?
Yeah, no,
think,
but
yeah.
yes, but I'm thinking if you are seeing this, because of course we see from economic data, macroeconomic data, that more and more, wealth, and thereby inherited wealth, capital, yes, Thomas Piketty, this famous book about it, yes, is more and more important. It was very important up to Second World War. Then the war kind of all the wealth, basically, and income was the most important source. And now we are slowly going back to the situation, which is not unlike the situation in, like, early 20th century, when you have a lot of very, very wealthy people who will potentially, or, people whose parents are very wealthy, and, or maybe not, I'm not talking billionaires because they don't matter in many ways, but, like, just you have growing number of people who can count this as a very significant item on your in your analysis, right?
That's right. Yeah, but also then what you would probably do is you probably think about the next generation. Agree? So the inherited wealth that you get, you probably want to kind of protect that, create a trust, for example, or an endowment, for example, for the next generations, so that you can pass it on. Because I think increasingly asset prices are rising. People are finding it more and more unaffordable, especially the young people. So your children, I mean, not you, but the children, the next generation, yeah, will find it a lot more challenging, to be able to afford to buy, a property, for example. So maybe what you could do is actually turn it around and turn it into down payments for these kids to help them, to give them a head start in life. I think that makes a big difference, because once you don't have to worry about the down payment, and you can start affording, the property that you're buying, then I think it gives you some entry and into the it helps you build your wealth, I think, from there.
Thank you so much. No, this is very helpful.
Thank you very much, Joy and Maciej. In view of the time, I would like to move on to the Q&A session because I have collected your questions. I allowed myself to group those questions. And the first question is for you, Maciej. Are there any exams? What about the thesis?
Yeah. So there are exams. You know, in Joy's course, for example, there is a famous exam, but exams are not given during the modules. That's kind of an interesting innovation of the program, which is that you have an exam period of about 10 days outside the module, after the module, and you can choose, you know, a 2-hour slot in those 10 days, whenever. If you prefer taking exams in the middle of the night, you can do that. And you do it online. The only thing is once you start, you need to finish, but in kind of in one go. But other than that, it's any time during that period. Now, I must also say that exams are a minority of courses. Most courses have projects, team projects. Thomas mentioned a lot about teams, and this is in view of the very kind of practical nature of the program. The fact that we want you to apply knowledge, and not only like to, you know, pass an exam, but actually do something of real importance, solve a real life problem, or a problem that is similar or analogous to what you encounter in your organization. And the projects are a very good format for that. You also mentioned thesis. So yeah, we don't have a thesis because it's an American, very practical type of degree. We have a capstone, which basically asks you to do. It's kind of like a team project on steroids. First of all, it's not team; it's individual, but also it's like it asks you to apply lessons from a number of courses. So you need to take the combination of different pieces of knowledge and apply them to two types of problems. One is an analytical problem, a decision. It can be business plan, marketing strategy, financial strategy. That we call the strategic analysis component. And the other type of application that we expect you to graduate is the so-called leadership component. When we want you to take the knowledge and change things, implement something, mentor people, those two together, strategic analysis and leadership, gives you the capstone, which is our approach to thesis.
Thank you very much. I would like to move on to the two final questions. I grouped them. The first question is, what are the application requirements? The application requirements, as outlined in the presentation already, will require a minimum of 8 years of work experience with at least 3 years of leadership experience. Of course, we can make exceptions in special cases, but you would need to tell us why you would be eligible for the program despite of the lack of 8 years or 3 years of work or managerial experience, but it's possible. Another point is that we require university degree from of any field of study. So coming from a business degree or engineering or medicine, any university degree is accepted. You would need to upload documents like a CV and a motivation letter, and name 2 references that the application portal would reach out to in order to get reference letters. In view of the time, I would like to move on to the last question, and maybe the most important one for our attendees, which is the question, is there financial support available? What about scholarships?
I can take it.
Oh, yes, please.
Yes, so in terms of financial support, I would say there are 3 routes. There is a need-based route, which is basically, as the name suggests, based on demonstrated need. There is this kind of targeted merit-based scholarships, and you should check our website, embac.edu, to find out what are the merit-based scholarships applicable to your region, to your country, because they differ. And the third option is our most prestigious scholarship, the Open World Scholarship, which is very, very selective. Everybody can apply for this. And this scholarship is for people who have something in their background that is kind of in sync of what Thomas was talking about before, which is this idea of open society, the kind of challenging dogmas in any setting, yes, challenging established hierarchies. If you are kind of more of a rebellious spirit, that's the fellowship for you. And we like those people here at CEU. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it needs to be highlighted that for us, scholarships are not charity, but investment in your talent, in your future.
Absolutely.
We're happy to provide those fellowships. So if you have any, if you want to discuss your fellowship or just optimize your application, feel free to book a one-on-one consultation. I just provided the link. Don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight in Lisbon.
Thank you so much.
London. Thank you, Joy, for joining us. Thank you, Olivier, for joining us.
Thank you
for your input. Thank you. Get in touch with me and good night.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.